I wanted to protect my clan. I wanted to be involved in keeping my clan, my family, my country safe. When there is doubt, there is no doubt. So we send an aircraft up.
But have you had your own frustrations with certain decisions or
Absolutely.
Politics? Or
absolutely.
Okay.
That is, I think that is human. That is human. But then you have to look at it in the long term. Does the machine still work? He wanted us to give him all the possible angles on the problem, come up with solutions. And in the end, he said, okay, I've heard enough. I'm gonna make up my mind. We're going to do this. And I want each of you to execute as if it were your own decision. And so I'm really grateful for people like that, people who tell you, hey, give me everything, but I'll make the decision, and you execute as if it were your own decision. Has it happened? Yes, it can happen, and it has happened that people actually freeze up. But then the team takes over. Defense is a insurance policy. It's the same thing as you do not want to pay too much for your premium to protect your house from burning down. Until the day your house burns down, we are in that situation now. We have let ourselves fall asleep at the wheel when it comes down to the international situation and the security posture. We have scrapped capabilities, and now all of a sudden we have to build them up again. If you don't use it, you lose it. We also created a cyber force to actually look at war in the cyber domain. It's roaring for the moment. What we see happening in this cognitive domain on the internet, trying to harm people, is just it's incredible. We have to really look into that. AI may have the same effect as the discovery of explosives in the world. There should always stay a human in the loop. Unplugging the computer should always be a possibility. And right at that moment, the attack was really nearby because our whole building was shaking. We look at each other, we say to each other, there we go again. And when everything was over, we had a cup of coffee together and we said, like, we are made for this job.
Hi, and welcome to the next edition of the Beyond the Bubble podcast. It's a great pleasure to have here someone with an incredible military career, 38 and a half years in the Belgian military with the Air Force and in different roles, Ivo Dierick. And before we get into the conversation, I'd like to ask you to consider subscribing to the channel and put comments and questions and get in touch with us with your feedback. We are more than happy to have that. And please share the show with everyone who would be interested in it. And the good news is that the show is now available in 12 languages with subtitles, and that you can find in the settings if you're watching it on YouTube, and you can enjoy it in all these languages. So with that, warm welcome, Ivo. Thank you for being here.
Andras, thank you for having me here in this beautiful studio.
Amazing. And before anything else, how do you introduce yourself when somebody asks, okay, what is it that you do? You're a colonel and you are semi-retiring from the Belgian army?
Well, I am in transit out of active duty. So the end of this year, I will leave the active duty. I will stay on a little longer in the reserves. But I'm looking forward to taking it a little easier after 38 and a half years in the uniform, protecting not only Belgium, but NATO worldwide. When I introduce myself, I'm a colonel in the Air Force, and I'm an air-based defender by trade. So I got trained to defend our air bases, large installations, very difficult, on the ground and from threats in the air, which brings us today to a topic that is, again, very hot, drone protection. We just had this weekend a lot of activity in Belgium.
At the time of recording, and hopefully not at the time of release.
I hope that we can tackle this very soon.
Yeah.
So I was always in security roles, also teaching in security roles my whole career. Security, not safety. Security of the physical installations, the security of the personnel, the security of operations, the security of our aircraft, but I transited to a more defense-wide role. So I also was responsible in the end for the ports, land installations, everything you could imagine.
You mentioned something interesting, the distinction between security and safety. Can you tell me more about where that line is?
Well, safety is keeping basically all the people safe against accidents, against fire, not having something fall on your head while you're working, not tripping over tools when you're in the workshop. That is the safety part of it. Security is actually keeping the bad guys outside of your fence, so that they don't intrude into your network. That is the main difference between safety and security.
And in security, what distinctions are there? And I'm asking it as a layperson who's generally interested in these kind of things, but with no technical knowledge. So is it the physical security?
Yeah.
And I almost said safety, the sort of the physical part of it. There is certainly the IT or digital or the technological side, I would guess.
Yes.
And presumably there are others.
Yes. So we basically start from the person. So personnel security is making sure that everybody who works in our environment is trustworthy. So we do have to look into the trustworthiness of your personnel and to keep them trustworthy. That is making sure that you do not have people with bad intentions getting into your organization. Mm-hmm. That's where it starts. Now, once you have those people assembled inside your organization, then you have to start looking at where are they working and how can we keep the working environment safe, which starts at the gate. And the fence, so keeping people outside that are not wanted inside, and making sure that those who need to come inside can come inside.
Which is probably far more complicated than it sounds.
It is quite complicated, yeah. And we go inwards. So you don't only have the fence and the entrance. Then you come to buildings. Buildings need to be secured so that only the right people can get inside the buildings. Inside those buildings you have rooms. You need to secure rooms. And then on top of that, then we put the technological infrastructure on top of it. Everything needs to be secure before you can start installing networks. That was basically my part of it. I had a colleague in my last job who was solely responsible for cybersecurity. So after we had done our job, then his team would come in, put in the cables, and make sure that all the cybersecurity was put in place on our IT systems. That's basically the whole layer of what you need to look at in terms of security.
And you do that Belgian-wide, so wherever there are military bases, or does it go beyond the military part? So take Brussels Airport or kind of high-value civilian assets or civilian venues?
No, the Belgian Defense is mainly responsible for its own barracks, its own troops, but also for the operation. So when we send people abroad, we have to deploy all this infrastructure and all this secure infrastructure to the place where we are going to operate. On the other hand, since we are part of the government system, we obviously help out the other departments. Now, you mentioned like the national airport. I was fortunate to be a security officer of the 15th Wing with in the past C-130s, now the A400 transport planes. That is a unit that is integrated in the national airport. And so this unit makes an integral part of the national airport. So yes, we do have to coordinate, we do have to work together. Do we help out? Absolutely. For instance, the cyber force now of the Belgian Defense is actually responsible, together with the Center for Cybersecurity, for the whole of Belgium. And so we do actively participate in securing the country. At this moment, there's a lot of need for more involvement of the Belgian Defense in actually keeping the civilians and the civilian infrastructure safe and sound. We have seen this, for instance, in the North Sea, in the exclusive economic zone, where we are now having to protect the cables that lie on the seabed. And so, yes, the Belgian Defense does also help out other organizations in Belgium.
In which countries is the Belgian military present now?
Well, we have been involved in United Nations operations, mostly in the Middle East and in Africa. We were also heavily involved in Afghanistan. I was also part of the NATO mission in Kabul when we were there with NATO. We are protecting NATO airspace. We are protecting the NATO borders. Like, for instance, we just finished a air policing mission out of Iceland. Iceland, NATO member, does not have a military. So all the other countries who have military forces do a rotation in Iceland to keep the Icelandic airspace and everything around it safe. We have an ongoing mission, a forward enhanced presence, as we call it, near the border with Belarus. So we're in the Baltic states, we go to Poland, we do missions in Romania to keep pressure.
And these are NATO Central Command that would coordinate these?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
We very seldomly do something on our own. Belgium is small, the Belgian Defense is small. We always prefer to be together with our allies, whether it be an United Nations mission, whether it be an EU, European mission, or preferably a NATO mission.
And when you say in Iceland, which term you used? Was it protecting the airspace?
Air policing.
Air policing.
Yeah.
Sounds very exciting. What is air policing actually?
Air policing is making sure that the skies stay safe, and so we do have a lot of incursions by Russian aircraft into NATO airspace, especially over the Baltic Sea, but also the Atlantic Ocean. And so Iceland needs to be protected. And so we did send our F-16s to Iceland to do the air policing mission. And so that is to go intercept aircraft that fly without the transponder, that are not identifiable on the radar, that do not respond to radio traffic. And so that is what this air policing mission is all about.
And that is not a completely uncommon thing, you say. So there is a flight without transponder, without active communication with those in charge of that airspace.
Yes.
I mean, that's a very hostile move, it sounds.
It's not necessarily a hostile move. It is something that you need to check out what it actually is.
Right. You cannot make those assumptions immediately, I understand,
No.
But it's not elegant, to say the least.
It's not elegant. Well, that is the same as what we have witnessed here with the drone overflights. What is it? It's not immediately defined as hostile, but you have to go check. You have to see what's going on. And that is what the air policing mission is about. That's something that has been going on end of World War II, actually, as we need to keep our airspace safe, and we need to identify who's flying around.
And what is your role in such a situation? So are you in a command center and you're giving instructions, or you are responsible for setting up systems and structures in advance to say how this is actually organized if and when there's an incident? Or how does it work in practice?
Why can I talk about this? Because during my career, I usually had to provide the troops that kept the aircraft safe on the ground. But since I was also, for 4 years, a military professor at our defense college, I had to also study everything that had nothing to do with my own career field, but the rest of the Air Force career fields. And so air defense, air policing, logistics, operations, I was exposed to that. And when I was the security officer for the air staff, you all come sit together with the general and you discuss what's going on and how you are going to organize the defense of our airspace. And so I was exposed to it a lot, and so that's why I can give some more info on it.
So how does such a thing work? So you set up the radars, the detection systems, and the immediate response systems when there is an incident?
Well, you have to make sure that you cover your airspace with radars so that you can see what's happening. That is the detection phase of it. Once you detect, you have to evaluate what it is. You usually try to have a contact, a radio contact. If all else fails, well, you have to send something up to go look at it. Aircraft, fighter aircraft. So then we send up the fighter aircraft that are on standby. We share this mission in the Benelux. So Luxembourg is just starting to build their own air force.
Okay, that's a thing, the Luxembourgish Air Force.
It's we're going to have a Luxembourg Air Force. But so the Luxembourg airspace is protected by Belgium and the Netherlands. Belgium and the Netherlands, we rotate this air policing mission over the Benelux. And so depending on which air base is on standby, the control center on the ground will send up 2 aircraft to go look at what's happening.
How easy or difficult is that? You detect something, there's an alert, and you just snap a finger and the F-16 is up in the air? I mean, it doesn't sound that straightforward or cheap for that matter. So I guess it's not nothing for them to get into the cockpit and off they go.
It's a whole system. That's why we have an Air Force. That's what we do every day. We prepare to keep our airspace safe. We prepare to keep our territory safe. And so that is what the Air Force is all about. We put people, structures, training, everything in place so that when things happen, yes, it can be at the snap of a finger. If it's really that urgent, the aircraft has to be airborne in the air within 5 minutes. And our pilots are trained. Our pilots are really good. They usually get up in the air in less than 5 minutes.
And I'm curious about the psychology of it, because you are, not you personally, but someone is in that sort of position. They get an alert. Maybe nothing happened in the past 4 months or an extended period, right? Like, so there was this period of calm, and suddenly something looks like an alert. So how do they evaluate that it's not a false positive, that it's not a missed not opportunity, but a missed incident, where they are grounded enough to give a realistic assessment, or rather err on the side of caution and say, we'd rather send someone up and be wrong than miss an actual serious threat?
Yep. When there is doubt, there is no doubt. We send an aircraft up.
What is that? So when there is doubt?
When there is doubt, there is no doubt. So we send an aircraft up.
Right.
Okay. What you have to understand is that we do not send rookies after 2-3 months doing this mission. This requires a lot of training. This requires a lot of preparation. This takes years.
Sorry to stop you here, but what is this in the sentence? This meaning the assessment or every piece of the process?
Every piece of the process. We do not work with people who don't know what they're doing. We train for it every day. We bring the young recruits with us. We have the experienced pilots training the younger pilots. We have the experienced crew chiefs making sure that the younger ones learn how to maintain the aircraft. The air traffic and the air defense controllers go through years of training before they are responsible for actually making that call. The call to action is not just given to anybody. It is the whole system. And the good thing about it, and the what I personally really liked during all these years, is you are part of a team, and the team will make sure that you don't make mistakes. That if individuals do not make mistakes. When it comes down to setting up this whole system in order to avoid mistakes, we use the Swiss cheese model.
Okay.
The Swiss cheese model is you put enough layers of Swiss cheese next to each other in order to not have one hole through all those slices. There will be always one layer that will stop the error.
Right. Kind of a redundant system in a good sense.
Yeah, you have to put in a robust, redundant system. What I really value is you will always have somebody in your organization who will raise this finger and say, hey, did we look at everything? What about this? Did we miss this? So you can actually rely and fall back on the system to make sure that no individual is allowed to just make mistakes just like that.
So how does that come together in a military, which is by definition a hierarchic and very layered organization with a chain of command and everything else? So how does that come together with an individual having a certain room for judgment, maneuver, individual, not necessarily initiative, but their own space to make those calls? So how does a somewhat rigid hierarchic system come together with the individual's, the trust in the individual and the flexibility of the individual, which is also an integral part of the system, like you say?
Here I have to reflect on what we call esprit de corps of the Air Force. In the Air Force, the pilot is the one who is going to fly the plane, shoot down an adversary, drop the bombs, transport goods and people from A to B. But he is actually only good at flying the plane. He cannot maintain the plane. He cannot keep the plane safe on the ground. There's lots of things that the pilot does not control. Now, when he starts up his jet, he needs to be absolutely sure that the bombs are attached correctly, that there's fuel in the plane. Well, he has to rely on the whole system around him. When we talk about how to make an aircraft fly, we say one pilot, 70 people around him to make it happen. Mm. So there's 70 different trades that need to all work together to make the aircraft fly. Now, hierarchically, from the very beginning on, we have to learn to trust the other person, and you train on it, train. Every single day, our people are training to make this happen, to get these aircraft airborne, to keep them safe on the ground, to make sure that everybody's paid, to make sure that there's food on the table. So we work together for this one mission, and that is to do what we are made to do.
What would it be considered if, let's say, you give an order? You say order or command?
An order.
An order. So give an order, and your subordinate or someone who's lower ranked than the person you gave that order to has a different opinion, and it's not insubordination. It's not like they are refusing to comply with your order, but they say, I don't think it's that. I don't think that assessment is the way you think it is. I have a different view on that. How does that play out in a system like that?
This question brings me back to a couple of days ago. I met my first, he's been retired for 20 years now. I met my first commanding officer in Brustem when I graduated from the academy. He taught me how to deal with it. He was the boss, and he always asked of us what we thought. And he, as long as there was no decision, we could say whatever we wanted. He did not tolerate bullshit. That was clear. He wanted us to think out of the box. He wanted us to give him all the possible angles on the problem, come up with solutions. And in the end, he said, okay, I've heard enough. I'm gonna make up my mind. we're going to do this, and I want each of you to execute as if it were your own decision. That was at the very start of my career. I have always kept that in mind. I've always done that, and that's the way it actually worked. You listen to different opinions. You asked earlier about avoiding mistakes. Well, that is how it works. In my last job, when I took the job, I called my secretary, who's actually quite low in the ranks. I said to him, please make sure that if you think that I am going to make a mistake, that you come find me. And in 5 years that we worked together, he came to warn me 3 times. He said, like, sir, you may want to reconsider this. That is how it actually works if you are a team that's really knit together. And although I am 10 ranks above him, I respect him for what he does.
Yeah.
Because he was very good at stuff that I couldn't do. He was actually managing all the administration of my whole team, him alone. And so I had to respect him for that. He helped me with all my administration, because I didn't have time to go into the nitty-gritty detail. He did. It was his job.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for people like that, people who tell you, hey, give me everything, but I'll make the decision, and you do as if it were, you execute as if it were your own decision.
Yeah, it's even transferable to the corporate world, I think, in many ways.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
And how does politics come into this? Because you are ultimately under the leadership slash guidance or the direction of the political level. So Minister of Defense is your ultimate political boss. So how does that relationship come into play, that you are the expert, so to say, and you have everything, your hands on the ground, but the political decisions are what they are, and that is what determines your ultimate task.
Mm-hmm. Well, there, from the start of a career, especially as an officer, because the officers will have to actually put in place the political guidance, we are taught that the military is under the leadership of the political world. We have to execute faithfully what our elected government tells us to do, and there is no discussion about that. Ultimately, they are politically responsible. On the other hand, that forces us to be as clear as possible towards them of the consequences of what we are doing. So we are always looking into explaining to the politicians, to Parliament, to the general public, what we do and why we do it. But we have to be very sharp, us in the service, to actually defend our case, and especially talk about possible consequences of what they ask us to do.
You tell me to the degree you're comfortable answering this, but have you had your own frustrations with certain decisions or
Absolutely.
Politics? Or
absolutely,
okay.
I think that is human. That is human. But then you have to look at it in the long term. I can now reflect on my career, and it always swings back and forth. And sometimes you have a better time. Sometimes it's a lot harder. But in the end, the only thing that matters is, does the machine still work? Does it still do what it needs to do? Does the Belgian Defense is there to keep Belgium and NATO and the EU safe? Yes, the answer is yes.
I was going to throw that question back to you again to say, how do you see it today?
We do not have a strong strategic culture. Only the last government drafted the very first national security policy. This government is saying, like, with what is happening in the world around us, that they are going to update the national security policy. Actually, a national security policy is a start, but then you have to operationalize it. Then you have to do something with it. Then you have to make it tangible, not just a document that you can put on the table in the parliament and in business clubs and stuff like that and say, see, we have a national security policy. You actually have to live it. You have to do something with it.
What are the core points of that national security policy?
But national security policy is, what is the role of Belgium in the world? It has a lot to do with how do you see your country, and how are you going to make sure that you keep your country safe in this volatile, uncertain, chaotic world? You have to actually say what you are going to do to keep everybody safe and to keep our prosperity, the future generations. That is actually what a national security policy is. You look at who is threatening us, and you look at external factors, internal factors, and then you put something against those threats to our society. The main mission is to keep our outward borders safe. Now, our outward borders, they are not the borders of Belgium. We consider them the borders of Europe and NATO territory. Okay.
So Europe, NATO territory, and there's Schengen, right, which complicates it somewhat,
Yeah.
which is not EU per se. You take Norway and others, so
Yeah.
yeah. Even the term border becomes a political question.
Borders are. We were going for a borderless world. Well, I never believed in that statement. The borderless world. You will always have people who will keep borders or put up new borders. Even in the cyber domain, you now see that people are putting up borders there. Even in space, we're going to think about, hey, who can control what? It's again borders. So it's a very fluid thing. But for the Belgian defense, we look outward. We do not look internally into Belgium. Internal into Belgium is the police and state security that are responsible for that. Everything that goes outward is for the Belgian defense and foreign affairs. And everybody needs to very well understand what the role of each participant in this is. Now, if you have a national security policy, then you can start defining who's responsible for what and who needs to talk with who about the topics. But then it comes to actually operationalizing it, what you describe in the policy, and that is defining what all those stakeholders need to do. And that's where we need to put some extra effort in, because you have it's human, it's normal. When it's not sexy, when it's not fancy, you don't want to touch it. When it's very rewarding, everybody wants to grab a piece of it.
What would be the former and the latter?
Well, what is not sexy is doing the grunt work out in the field and waiting for something to happen. That's not sexy. Nobody wants to do it. At this moment, cyber is sexy, and everybody wants to grab cyber. Everybody wants to have a piece of it because it generates a lot of business. It generates high visibility. There's lots of budget that is made available for everything that touches on cyber, and so everybody wants a piece of that. And so there's rivalry to do stuff and grab stuff, and there's rivalry to get rid of as much stuff as possible.
Yeah.
For instance, a very tangible thing is the protection of critical infrastructure in Belgium. Now, when it is in Belgium and when it is civilian territory, this is a police task. The police does not really like it, and they want to give it to the military. We will put the military in charge of guarding nuclear power plants, patrol the streets of certain areas. We will put them in the non-sexy jobs. That's not how it works. If it is internal, if it's civilian territory, this should remain a police task and should remain under the Minister of Internal Affairs and not the Ministry of Defense.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean about operationalizing it and making sure that every stakeholder in Belgium knows exactly what he is responsible for.
Which is not an obvious thing, given the Flemish, the Walloon, the Brussels, the political regional competencies.
Absolutely,
in
yeah,
Belgium.
yeah. It is not easy.
Is the Belgian defense, how should I put that? Is it an important part of the unity of Belgium? What I'm trying to hint at is you take football and you take beers, maybe not even beers, but football is definitely something that unites the country. But defense seems to be another joint effort where you don't have those cleavages or those differences.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, because you have to work together. You need everybody to make the team actually work well. I had the fortune of working in a bilingual environment all my career. When I was in Kabul for the security mission of the airport there, we were under German command. My boss was Walloon, because I was attached to the Chasseurs Ardennais from Marjan-Famenne, the famous infantry unit from the Ardennes. And we were only about 20% of the whole team were Flemish speaking from the Air Force, but we made it happen. There was only one mission, and everybody understood that accomplishing the mission was the only thing that mattered. And if you look at it from that perspective, mixing the different cultures, not only in Belgium, so not only between the German speakers, Francophone, Flemish. When you put those people into a NATO mission, an EU mission, a United Nations mission, we are actually looked at, hey, the Belgians are going to teach us how to talk to each other, because they have to do it internally already. On Kabul, they looked at us because we had the Germans, we had the French contingent, we had the Brits, we had Norwegians, we had the UK was there. So it was really a mix on this base. And when it came down to actually crisis situations, they always looked for Belgians to help out, making sure that everybody understood, because we usually speak 3-4 different languages. We are a little better at trying to understand the other person. Why? Because we have to live with it in our own country. We need to make compromises. We know the art of the compromise, not the art of the deal, the art of the compromise. Why we are good at it here in Belgium? You have to understand that our broader region, Belgium plus the south of the Netherlands, the north of France, we have been invaded for so many millennia. So everybody tried to pass through this area. So we've had the Normans, we've had the Romans, we've had the German invasions, we had France come through here, the Brits, the Spanish. Everybody tried to have a piece of what is now called Belgium. And so if you look at how we had to adapt to all these different cultures coming through, I think that is part of what our DNA is about. I've been in tenuous situations in Afghanistan, in Congo. There is something here in my head that clicks, and I said like, oh, now I have to go in observation mode, see what's happening. And actually it's about self-preservation. And then you come to a compromise. Because we as Belgian Defense, Belgium as a whole, we are not a world power. We do not impose ourselves, but we try to get the best out of it for ourselves, and that's a difference in approach that I have witnessed. If you are with a French contingent, it's their way or the highway. I was under German command. It was es soll so sein, and nothing else. No discussion. We are not like that.
But is that always possible? So you mentioned strenuous or crisis situation. Sometimes it is yes or no, shoot or not shoot, engage or not engage, and not necessarily the compromise.
Yeah, but that's another level. That's another step. If his radar says you are being shot at, then the mindset will change. Then we come into a different state of mind.
Is that psychological aspect being addressed in trainings, in the teaching that
Absolutely.
you were involved in?
Absolutely.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
What is being taught?
All our training actually is geared toward making that decision yes or no. And we recreate instances where you will have to evaluate yes or no. It's always in the scenario of the training. There will be moments where you reflect on what am I going to do, and that starts with basic training. Basic training in one of the very first courses that you get. It's being on guard duty. Being on guard duty, that will be when you are maybe 10 to 12 days in uniform. And during those exercises, you will already learn, is this an enemy? Can I shoot at him? Do I have to shoot at him? Or do I challenge? Or is this a friendly? It starts with those basic, simple things. It's always evaluate the situation and then decide. Now, this pilot that we send up, that is 3 years after that he had this lesson of standing on guard duty, he will do exactly the same when he's in his aircraft, standing guard in the air when there's an unidentified Russian aircraft that he then identifies. And then he has to look at, okay, what do I do with this? So it is a constant training, and everything is geared towards making the right decision. We also teach everybody all the ins and outs of the law of armed conflict and what you can do, what you cannot do. We are, especially in, I must say, Belgian Defense is very advanced in that. Up to the level of the individual soldier, you have yearly training on the law of armed conflict. So you know exactly what you can do and what you cannot do.
Yeah,
we stress on that.
And in terms of somebody getting like panicking, for instance, or blacking out and kind of freezing in a very tough situation, how is a soldier or a serviceman prepared for that?
That's where the team comes back into play. That is why you are very seldomly alone. We usually in the military work with duos. You never send somebody alone on a mission. You always have a wingman, or you always have a partner that has the same job to do as you, so that at least you have somebody to fall back on, who will cover your back, and you will cover his or her back. That's also a military concept. And can it happen? Has it happened? Yes, it can happen, and it has happened that people actually freeze up. But then the team takes over. Then the team will take over the mission, or will protect the person who freezes. Yeah, and that is what you do. That's what you do in training. That is why we make the young recruits share a tent when they sleep out in the fields at night, so that they learn how to actually live with each other and it's cooking together. It's sleeping together. It's sometimes having hardship together. Now that serves as a purpose to create this esprit de corps, this team effort, and that's something that is constantly focused on during a whole career in the military.
That makes a lot of sense, creating that trust and that team spirit that you talk about. I wanted to come back for a second to the area we started towards, but then didn't finish up, in terms of the defense and security future in Europe.
Yeah.
We talked about how much resources or budget is being given.
Yeah.
So where do you see, and it's a large question I know, but where do you see, given the geopolitical changes of the past few years, this headed? Are we, and I say we not just as thinking of Belgium, but as NATO, with this famous 2% of GDP being spent on, and that's being increased, but it takes time even to the infrastructure, the production of those weapons or assets or other elements. So it takes time to get to a certain level. Where do you see where we are today and where we're headed?
We are finally back on track. We are finally, especially for the Belgian Defense, we're finally looking at setting the bar at a higher level. We've always been forced by the budget cuts to lower the bar, but now we're pushing it back up again. It's necessary. Now, the debate of the 2, 3.5%, 5% is just a numbers game. Now, on the other hand, the 2%, we should have always spent 2%. Then we would not have been in the situation that we are in. After the fall of the Eastern Bloc, when we thought that we were all going to be friends around the world, and that the world was flat and we were going to have this global marketplace and we would all be friends, I was very skeptical about it when that happened. I went through that whole process, because that's not how history works. We have cut down less than the bare minimum over the years. Now that is all about deterrence. That is all about making sure that you have a sound security insurance policy. Defense is a insurance policy. It's the same thing as you do not want to pay too much for your premium to protect your house from burning down. Nobody likes to spend too much, and so you always try to pay less and less and less.
Until the lightning hits.
Until the day that your house burns down, and you say like, oh, if only I had upped my premium by 50 euros last year, as was told to me. We are in that situation now. We do need to also look at this moment at what we need to protect. We have forgotten to protect what is valuable to us. We have in Europe, though Europe as a whole, Belgium a little more than some other European countries, we have actually lived in peace for too long. We have been put to sleep by the others. We have let ourselves fall asleep at the wheel when it comes down to the international situation and the security posture. And so we need to quickly wake up, because the threats are there. They have always been there, but not as visible as they used to be visible. But now they're clear, and we have not spent enough, and we have actually given away certain capabilities. We have scrapped capabilities, and now all of a sudden we have to build them up again. We do not have a close protection system for our air bases any longer. So an anti-aircraft close protection system to protect our air bases from incoming adversary aircraft. We said, oh, we don't need it anymore. We have air superiority here in the West. We are never going to see Russian aircraft or East Bloc aircraft coming to bomb us anymore. So we got rid of it because we don't need, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so what we now see is all of a sudden there's a new threat, drones. And yes, maybe we will have to defend our critical infrastructure again. Maybe we will have to defend the port of Antwerp, the port of Zeebrugge against incoming missiles, Shahed drones or whatever one day. But we're not prepared anymore. So we have to start from scratch again and build up this capability. Now, earlier on, we elaborated on building this trust and how you set up this incredible system. It takes years. If you lose something, it will take, what we say in the military is, if you have to start from scratch, it will take you about 5 years to recreate a new capability. Now, if you keep it going, you can up it in a couple of months. If you still have the capability, if you still have the instructors, if you still have people, if you need to surge a capability, you can do it in a matter of months. It's putting new people through the system, having the old farts explain the young ones how it works, and you can really ramp up quickly. Now, if you have to start from scratch, we usually say 5 years.
Yeah. That doesn't sound very good, very reassuring, given the very recent drone appearances. And again, I'm trying to apply your methods and not immediately evaluate what it is. But the very fact of drones flying over the national airport or a military base is not good.
Yeah, I personally have been advocating this since about 2017 that it was going to happen. But then you are sometimes looked at. You are
too paranoid.
They say, "Oh, you're paranoid," or he wants more money, or he wants more toys. That's usually how it's being put aside. Unfortunately, it has happened. It is happening for the moment, and we do need to look very closely into our premium for defending what is dear to us. And you need to step up.
You use the word premium, and I think premium also as an insurance premium, but also a premium as a much higher cost than, like you said, if we had kept certain assets or certain capabilities or just infrastructure, even upgrading it to a more capable system is far less expensive than buying it from scratch, setting it up, creating everything.
Absolutely.
So there's a massive surcharge for that complacency. Where do you see the future of war? Because when you say security, it's changing radically. It's security, certainly there's a physical part of us, of our lives, of our livelihood, of our country and wealth being protected. But there is a very different angle to it, because we can talk about influence operations, media, foreign influence through social media or other associations or societies or organizations. So this kind of societal disruption, which is engineered by third countries, to put it that way, so hostile external powers. And another angle of that is these are not necessarily always state actors. So you could have other groups, or it could be fundamentalist groups, or it could be other ideological groups. So it has become very messy as to what is security and how does that translate into the future of war?
It's a big question. We should not first look at what is threatening us. We should actually have a reflection on what we want to protect. First, we should start off what is dear to us. What do we absolutely want to keep safe? What is actually our prosperity? What is dear to us here in Belgium? What is dear to us in Brussels, in Flanders, in Wallonia, the North Sea? You just evaluate on, hey, what gives me my comfort in life, individual level, up to the state level. Well, if you know what makes your life good, then you must say like, hey, this I want to preserve. When you take that step, it's easier then to deal with all these different outside threats that want to take, in fact, your prosperity away, because that's what it is. They want to just make sure that they come steal it, or they come threaten it, or they take it away from you. Because state actors, non-state actors, criminal gangs. If you look at the drug cartels, they're in it for themselves, and they want to harm the Belgian system. If you know what you want to protect, it's easier to confront all these different threat actors around you. Because you will start from, hey, this I need to keep safe. If I put this in place, I can tackle multiple adversaries. And that's how you start with it. Are we at war? Yeah, there's a war on drugs, as we have to sometimes hear on the news. We have a war with Russia. We have a war with whoever, with fundamentalists coming from the Middle East, or we have pressure from immigration from Africa. All these elements add to it. Now, when people think about war, they think about tanks rolling down the streets of Brussels. That is not going to happen anytime soon. On the other hand, we have to ask ourselves, is shutting down the air traffic over Brussels airport, is that an act of war? Is somebody trying to do something to us? Is attacking the hospital system in the province of Luxembourg and completely shutting down the whole system, is that an act of war? So then we come to the cyber domain, where the cyber domain, especially in the cognitive layer, so you have in the cyber domain, you have the cables, and you have the hardware that makes it work. You have then all the software that runs on it, but that's not interesting, because what happens in cyberspace, all the interactions that go over the internet, that's what we call the cognitive domain of cyber. That's where it really becomes interesting. That's where influence operations, disinformation campaigns, trying to influence people, or trying to steal, or trying to discredit people, that's where it happens. We have to look at it much more closely, because at this moment, most of the actions of adversaries actually evolve in this cognitive domain of cyber. And that's why the Belgian Defense created last year, it's a little over a year, that we created a cyber force in the military as the fifth pillar in the Belgian Defense. Next to land, air, navy, medical, we also created a cyber force to actually look at war in the cyber domain. It's roaring for the moment. What we see happening in this cognitive domain on the internet, trying to influence people, trying to actually harm people, is just it's incredible. We have to really look into that.
Incredible in the sense of
The amount of the amount of attacks. Attacking hospital systems. Just not too long ago, and they're looking also at Russian influence there. The dam system in Norway got hacked to control the dams. We have to look into shutting down vital systems when you get inside the system. That is cyber sabotage. So we have the physical sabotage where you put things on fire or you derail a train or whatever. But in cyber, the same thing happens because we are going to this connected world. Everything needs the Internet of Things, and we need to connect, and everybody wants to be in the cloud. Now the cloud is just somebody else's computer, and so you can get into that somebody else's computer and do something with it. So war has gone from the horizontal layer of air and land. Then we got to the air. We added air. Then we added space to it, and now we're adding the cyber domain and
the cloud to keep with the
everybody
with
says
the imagery.
The cloud, but it is where it has spread. We should not forget. We focus now on everything cyber, but we should not forget the physical, because ultimately all those systems are operated by humans somewhere on Earth. It's not. That doesn't happen in the cloud.
And I really appreciated your perspective when you say, before we focus on the threats and the different attacks or sabotage or other operations, look at what we want to protect. And I think similarly in this area, when you say war, what is the goal of war? Because goal of war used to be territorial conquest. And then basically usurping or harnessing or stealing whatever you have conquered in other lands and claiming it as your own, and then basically using it or subjecting people to taxes and all the rest. But perhaps the goal of war today is somewhat different. A contradiction to what I just said. Certainly Russia is really trying to conquer physical territory. But in some other cases, you say, okay, is it the resources, and do you actually need to make it your own to have it under your influence?
War. Why do people go to war? Well, after doing years and years of reading and studying and teaching about it, I have my own theory about it. It's all about resources. It's all about making your own life easier. And that is, you make it easy, you have it, but you have outsiders who want to come steal what you have, so you have to protect. The first element of war is, I need to protect my clan, and I need to protect the assets where my clan lives on. It's territory, but it's also resources. Because if I don't have the resources anymore, my clan will die. So the first element, in my opinion, of why we go to war is we need to make sure that we protect ourselves against people who want to harm us. Second reason why people go to war is it's much easier, instead of working for it and making it yourself and building it yourself, to just go steal what the other one has. And then you just prepare for going to steal and going to claiming lands. In the old days was about resources, but human beings were seen as resources too. A lot of wars in the old days were done to have cheap labor, slaves. It's not only the resource there, the ore or the extra wood that you could have, or the diamonds, or the whatever was found. People were also being attacked just to have more labor to make these beautiful castles and fortifications and whatnot. So that is basically what, for me personally, after so many years of studying and teaching about it, where it boils down to. And I believe that it will not really change, whatever we do.
Do you think there's a third reason why people go to war is ideology? And is ideology a justification for the two that you mentioned? Or is ideology, can it be as strong as to, I want to impose my ideology on another set of people, and therefore I go to war?
Mm-hmm. Interesting idea. I have actually taken that into consideration. Mm-hmm. Ideology is a means of my second part. Ideology is created to get a society to do some stealing somewhere else.
So you see it as a justification.
It's a justification. It's a justification to get people organized. You can use ideology to protect your own. Basically, all religion is to protect your own clan against outsiders. Ideology is then also used and then it's not in the protective way, then it's in the offensive way. To make your people all be geared up towards going to steal something.
I'm just thinking, and my example might be off, but I'm just wondering a bit out loud. You take, say, Sunni and Shia Islam is really at odds and have led to multiple wars like Iraq, Iran. Or you take the US in Vietnam. So in my mind, those might work as an example for not necessarily for the resources, but for the ideology, because the US, at least allegedly, was fighting communism, and then again with religious differences between two parts of the same religion being really at odds because of their views.
Shia and Sunni is two different clans. They want to protect their own, and they want to get more, so they have to attack the other one. It's again a rivalry of resources, of influence, of making sure that your influence, your clan, can grow, and so you need to you are in confrontation with somebody else, and that's how I try to always boil it down to the basics. Ideology. When we talk about the Vietnam War, that was all about communism against the free world, against the West.
Yeah, everything
in those days was on that level. It was against communism. It was, we want to be a democratic, free, liberal world, and you are the commies. So we just have to start wars, or we just have to protect others against the other ones.
Complex question, obviously, but looking at, again, identities, looking at political discourse, looking at political ideologies or religious ideologies having such an impact. So those can easily be the jet fuel of wars. Yep. On which those are started. I mean, even Putin would be in such a lockstep with the Orthodox Church and its former KGB agent patriarch, you know. Yep. So those things. But again, it's the religious ideology finding its political match, and then boom, leading to a war.
Yeah, that's if you study history, then yeah, of course you know that there's always something behind it. Religious wars. I just not too long ago, about a month ago, I did some studying on the period of the Holy Crusades. That was just about influence. It had actually nothing really to do with preserving the Holy Land, whatever. It all had to do with influence and with making sure that terrain and trade routes and business was kept going. And in those days, the popes, all they wanted was influence and money. It boils down to that.
Yeah.
It always comes down to I want to be better than the other person. And
very tribal, right?
it's very tribal. It is
Yeah.
very tribal. And if we forget to study that part of history, well, if you forget to study history, you're bound to repeat its mistakes. And sometimes I feel that we are there again.
We are there again, unfortunately. And a little bit switching over to another huge topic, which is AI. And how do you see AI's impact on your line of work, or the one that you are transiting out of, but looking at defense, or maybe more specifically the air part of it? Where is AI playing a role?
I'll start off with something that I have now at the end of my career, and looking at what's at this moment going on. My personal feeling is that AI may have the same effect as the discovery of explosives in the world. Explosives were discovered to help out, to do something good, for mining, for all that stuff. Now explosives have turned out to be something really bad.
Dual use.
Dual use. Nobel Peace Prize. Nobel realized that what he had discovered actually causes a lot of suffering in the world. My personal feeling is that AI might be in the same category in the future. So science often tries to make our lives better, but then you immediately have people who look at how can I use this to make actually my life better and other people's lives miserable. And that's what AI for the moment is, in my view, going towards. It's scary. AI for the moment, and what people are trying to do is scary. Because AI in this cognitive domain of cyber can wreak havoc.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And if you were, I don't know, Minister of Defense or Prime Minister for that matter, or someone, maybe not Belgium, maybe the US, where you have much more assets and capabilities and budgets, what would you do?
It's the same as with the medical science. At some point, you need to actually put a stop to certain developments where it goes really too far. Cloning people goes a little bit far. People now know it. They have done it with animals, and they have realized that this may be something dangerous. We have to look at AI very closely where it becomes dangerous, because the threat of the machine taking over what's going on is real. Now, the machine is really stupid, because the machine knows only two things: power, no power. Everything that has to do with a computer is very simple. It comes down to 0 and 1. 0, no power; 1, power. So if you unplug it, it has to stop. They're now saying like, oh, but these machines are gonna self-repair, and they're going to. We are seeing it now that algorithms are trying to protect themselves, but that goes completely off rail. And so you have to be careful with it, and you have to put a stop to certain things. Certain things are not good. Not every progress in science is good. It may unleash dangerous things. What Nobel discovered, that he unleashed something. Now we have to live with it. Same thing with nuclear weapons technology. Nuclear delivers us a lot of good. Without the radiation, all your goods in your pantry would go bad in no time. medical therapy would not be as advanced without nuclear. Nuclear weapons cannot be undiscovered. So they're there, and they're never going to go away. So we have to be very careful with what we do in the artificial intelligence domain. That's my idea.
I'm with you on that, especially if you think about how AI is increasingly connected to physical infrastructure. And you mentioned nuclear, but you mentioned even surveillance cameras and what have you. So the software can be extremely helpful, powerful,
Yes.
detecting patterns,
Yes.
alerting you to some adverse event.
Yeah.
But, and that your warning
Yeah.
also refers to the idea of the machine kind of developing its own agenda.
Yeah.
And that's where exactly the danger comes in, where you have a certain, well, the human oversight and the human policy, political, military goals.
Yeah.
And then the machine says, well, here are some better ones. Here are some that I'm not only recommending, I'm actually doing.
Yeah.
I'm actually, with the agentic and all the rest, taking those decisions on its own autonomously, which may or will not align with your stated human goals.
I believe that there should always stay a human in the loop. Unplugging the computer should always be a possibility. If we don't do that, then we chart into dangerous waters. So you need to actually keep an eye on what's going on. When it comes down to military technology, yes, the computer helps us a lot. Yes, we can do a lot more, a lot faster right now. But in the end, we always want a human operator making this decision. And that's where I can come back to what we talked about earlier. That is the training of every individual soldier on the law of armed conflict and on making this judgment. It's always you always want a human being that is properly trained to make to take this decision, yes or no.
I won't challenge you. I'm saying it as a thought experiment to say why. Like, why are we certain that the human's decision is going to be better, qualitatively better than what the machine could do?
We are not. We are not certain. But I do not want to depend on a machine. I value much more the interaction between people. I think that is that's what makes life so interesting. The human contact, the interaction, the differences of ideas, the differences of opinion. Most of the films now are really most of it is made by a computer. It's not acting anymore. It's they have these AI generated actors now. What you see on the internet passing by, it becomes all standardized. I like something where there's where it's not perfect. I value more a painting where you're you're forced to really look at it and interpret it. What AI for the moment is doing is it makes everything the same. You ask a question, and you already know the answer. You already know what's gonna come up. Yeah. And it is being manipulated now. What you see, so it's not so that now there's people already offering courses on what you should put on your website or in your article so that AI will pick it up. Okay, that's fooling the system.
That's, I think, is going to be the defining question of the next decades, even, of the proportion, the relation between human and machine, because sometimes machines can make better decisions, and perhaps it's like you take an X-ray, and if a machine can identify an early stage tumor, you definitely want to have that machine identified where a
Yes.
doctor might miss it.
Yes.
But when it comes to very consequential and extremely complex military decisions,
Yes.
you want the machine to give you advice, but you don't want it to make the
Exactly.
decision, right?
Exactly.
And even that advice, like you said, if it's skewed, if it's biased in some way because it weighed different factors that you, as a experienced with several decades behind you, would not have weighed a certain component, you need to know that. You need to have that transparency to understand where is that input coming from so you can make your very best decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's why I stress you always need, when it comes down to very important decisions, and life and death, for a doctor it's the same. Life and death decisions need to, in my opinion, need to have a human in the loop who actually understands what's being put forward, what's programmed, and all that stuff. Excel tables are great, but you need to know exactly what's behind all those numbers in the Excel chart. If you do not know how you come up to this calculation, if you change the slightest number in one cell, it might completely falsify the whole outcome. And so that's what we need to understand. That's what we need to keep. We need to keep the focus on understanding what we are doing and why we are doing it.
And I think the last part is even the most important, the why. Like you said, what are we protecting? What do we value? And what is it that we are doing this everything for? Putting all that effort and time and energy and resources into that.
I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek in that respect. Start with
the why. Yeah.
It's often overlooked. People are quickly focused, also in the military, quickly focused on what do I have to do, but that's the last part. What do I have to do? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And so that is that's an important question. Why?
So let me perhaps close it before we take the card. Something that I probably should have started with. Why do you decide on a military career? Why did you enter the force? And what kept you there your entire career?
The why is, and we have touched on this during this interview. Why is I wanted to protect my clan. I wanted to actually be involved in keeping my clan, my family, my country safe. Both my grandparents were in World War II. They were both in concentration camps as they were conscripts, and so they were captured by the Germans and put into camps for some time before they could return back to their homes. And so
they survived.
Yeah. But it was the soldier internment camps. So it was not the extermination camps that we associate concentration camps with mostly. But so all my young life, I was exposed to their stories. They told me the stories. So when I was with my grandfather working in the fields, we were just the two of us. Sometimes he would talk about his time in this internment camp near the Yugoslavian border and what he had to endure. My other grandfather served with the first balloon unit, protecting the critical infrastructure against the German air attacks. They let up these balloons to protect bridges and large installations and stuff like that.
Observation, or
they had observation balloons, but most of the job that he had was what they called the balloons to actually force the aircraft to not attack So they would just put up balloons around the bridge so that the Germans could not come and dive bomb the bridge, for instance. So it was a very interesting task. And so he had to walk for 120 kilometers on his wooden clogs from where he was released. He had to make 120 kilometers in 48 hours to get a free passage back home. So those are the stories that I grew up with. Plus, it was also the years of the height of the Cold War, with the protests against installation of nuclear weapons in Belgium. It was the times of all those protest songs. It was the height of the confrontation between the U.S. Western Bloc and the Soviet Union, and that's what I grew up with. And I remember one day looking at the movie on TV where the hordes of tanks would come rolling down the hills, and I said, like, I need to protect my family. And that's where I got a calling. And so yes, I started a career, and I'm now finishing a career in it. I've not regretted it one day.
And previously, as I said, it was the last question, but I cannot resist but ask you: is there any story, event, something that happened in that very long career of yours, be that in Afghanistan or anywhere else in the world, perhaps right here at your home base, something that you would say, okay, this is worth telling?
I have so many, but I'll pick one from Afghanistan. Unfortunately, it has also a bad side to it, because the person I went through this story with has committed suicide long after we were back, and not related to the military. But September 11, 2003, I was on guard duty during the night at Kabul International Airport. So I had the night shift from 7 in the evening till 7 in the morning, and we had our first attack on the base at 8 o'clock in the evening. September 11. They say, oh no, they don't use those dates. They don't go by important dates. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Well, they did that night. And so we get attacked on the airbase, and everybody's up in arms, and they're all running around, because 8 o'clock, people were still eating, people were still doing their normal job. It was not calmed down. We didn't have aircraft coming in that night, fortunately. But people were still busy, and it took about an hour for everybody to account for. Voila. The night progresses. 11 o'clock, another attack. 1 o'clock, another attack. 3 o'clock, the fourth attack. And at 5:15 in the morning, I was getting tired. So I was up all day. Then we had a busy night, and so me and my radio man, we are in the control room, and I'm sitting in my chair with my head down a little bit, and I hear my radio man say to me, "Hey, Captain, just put your head on the table, have a little rest. I'll stay awake." And the moment I look up to him and I say, no, it's going to be fine, we have an attack. And right at that moment, the attack was really nearby, because our whole building was shaking. I was shaking in my chair. We look at each other. We say to each other, there we go again. It only took, and people were asleep in their beds, then it only took 5 minutes for the whole base, 1,200 people, to be accounted for. So in one night, we went through a training that you could never replace. And when everything was over, we had a cup of coffee together and we said, like, we are made for this job.
Story for the ages.
Yeah.
With that, we have our card.
Okay.
So please pull one.
Pull one.
And if you could read it out and answer it.
Have you ever had a religious experience? That's an easy one.
Okay. An easy yes or no, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm still a religious man. I do hold it dear to my heart, to myself. Religion, I've had a couple of them in my career, but I'll also relate it back to the military. During my first year in training, we went to the military pilgrimage to Lourdes in France. It's every year in May. There's the military pilgrimage from all over the world coming to Lourdes, and so I was there. I was a young student, and the young ones, well, we were basically used as labor for the older ones. We had to. And so the first day that I got there, we had in the morning the Stations of the Cross, and we were going to do all the Stations of the Cross. And somebody says, "Here, you pull this person's wheelchair." So we were two, me and a colleague, and we are pulling a very old chaplain. And okay, we do our job and we go from station to station, and people kept coming up and coming to take pictures. And we were like, okay, this guy must be popular, okay, or maybe we are popular. But they said like, it must be the guy.
More likely. Yeah.
And so we're about halfway. And somebody from my village, who I didn't know that she was going to be there, she recognizes me and she comes up to me and she says, "Oh my God, Ivo, do you know who you are pulling?" And I said, no. I only saw Willems on his name tag. And it was like everybody was coming up, taking pictures. You are pulling Soy Willems. Soy Willems. He's the most famous chaplain in the history of the Belgian defense, who actually was the very proponent of making sure that all the conscripts were protected against the whims of the hierarchy. And he had a status in the Belgian defense, like, if you have Soy Willems with you, you better behave. And so people are taking pictures, and this lady from my village, she said like, "Oh, now you're gonna score a lot of points when you go back to Belgium." And when, because I was still, at that moment, I was still an altar boy, I was still heavily involved in, and people were like, and actually, the more I pulled and pushed on this cart, and the more I looked into what was going on, I actually felt like, okay, there is something here. There is something that, there is a reason behind a religion and behind people praying together, and behind, that is what really, that first experience in Lourdes, and I have gone back numerous times. Whenever I'm in the neighborhood, I just go back to that place, because I think that was where I understood why religions were invented to create this community that protects and helps and cares for each other. because there were a lot of people that were not even in a wheelchair, but that were being pushed around in beds, that come there to meet their maker, I guess. And that's where I felt like, yes, there is a maker. That particular day, doing that, I often reflect back on that.
Yeah.
It all came together in the underground dome, where they then do the mass ceremony, and singing together, and I could feel the vibe coming in, and so that was one of my religious experiences that I had in my life and that I wanted to share.
Which is amazing, because combining these two and your military career with this deep faith, I think it's very powerful. With that, Colonel Ivo, thank you so
very much for having me.
Thank you.